Now, I want your thoughts on this. Should we open restaurants in all prisons? That's what First Date star Fred Sirieux would do. He reckons that training inmates as chefs and waiters could help their rehabilitation. Fred has already set up 5 restaurants in prisons through his scheme, The Right Course. So, is this a great idea? Or do you think prisons are actually supposed to be about punishment? Give us a call and let us know your thoughts, 0207 862 2222, and we'll speak to you in just a moment. But first, let's speak to Fred himself. Welcome, Fred. First, can you clear up a little bit more about the scheme? How does it work? Who gets to go to the restaurant?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on. Well, The Right Course is about opening restaurants in prisons. All prisons have restaurants within their walls. What I'm proposing to do is change the way they are run and turn them into training restaurants. So what we do at The Right Course is we bring a method, we bring standards, and we show people how to run restaurants. So the inmates are effectively the chefs, baristas, the front of house. Of course, it's under strict supervision, but the goal is to train them, to upskill them, to ensure that they have qualifications when they leave and when they are released, so that we can help them find opportunities and jobs. And one thing that you said just now, you said prison is supposed to be about punishment. Yes, of course, it is about punishment. But very importantly and crucially, it is more about rehabilitation and ensuring that people are ready for release. And that is the key, because there are 3 things to ensure that people don't reoffend. 1 is to have a job on release. 2 is to have a place to live. And 3 is to stay in contact with your friends and family. This is proven. There has been much research done in this country and in many other countries, including the Nordic countries that you were talking about before. And there are about 90 prisons in the UK. And I think that if we want to make an impact, really, to the prison population and reduce the prison population and ensure people don't reoffend, I think that we need to run to roll out the scheme at pace within the prison estate, because effectively it is really only a workshop. Just like you have bike repair, you have carpentry, you have bricklaying. It's a workshop to upskill people. And we have to remember why people are in prison. A lot of the prison population have had terrible issues when they were children, in terms of their family circumstances. A lot of them have learning issues. And so if you look at all the statistics and the data about the reasons and the social economic context as to the reason why they ended up in prison, I think it's our responsibility to ensure that we get them out of the hole that they find themselves in.
But what about the people who will criticise this and say it's very unfair to give people who have broken the law these kind of opportunities when law-abiding young men and women will find it really hard to get on a course like this, will find it really hard to get these kind of qualifications, and will cost them a lot of money?
Well, I think that, if you look, for example, at professional education in this country, I started to work with professional education about 20 years ago. And at the time, you had about 280 catering colleges to train people, professional people, chefs and waiters and barista. Now, 20 years later, we have about 120 to 130 catering colleges. So we are not producing our own talent because we simply do not believe in the value of hospitality as a job. It is not a profession that is respected and that is valued. So I think that we need to think about what we want to do here, because at the end of the day, it's in our British values. It's in our Christian, Judeo-Christian values to believe in redemption and forgiveness. And it starts actually in prison, because if we don't do anything, people will invariably reoffend. The reoffending rate is around 50%. And an offender in prison costs £50,000 per year. So you can imagine the savings that we will have if people don't come back to prison once they are released, because it's about dignity, it's about pride, it's about having a job, and it's about having opportunities in life. And if we don't provide those to people, invariably they will keep on failing and will keep on paying the cost for their failures.
I think people at home might be really struggling to wrap their head around what a restaurant in prison might look like, but I think we have a few pictures of yourself actually taking part in this sort of scheme, and this will be in the kitchen. There they are, cooking the meals. Who gets to go to these restaurants? Is it the prison staff? Is it the prisoners themselves?
So this particular restaurant is in Berwyn in Wales. So we have 4 restaurants which are within the walls of a prison. So these ones, only the staff of the prison, the staff of the MOJ can go there, or the contractors of the prison. Today we are launching a new restaurant. I'm going there after this call. It's in Sudbury. So this is sitting outside of the prison and anybody can come. But today we've got a big pop-up launch event that's taking place in the evening. And we've partnered with a restaurant called Lovage to do the pop-up tonight. But for me, I think it doesn't really matter whether they are inside the prison or outside the prison. For me, it's about the quality of the teaching, the values that we are teaching these young men and young women, so that they understand that there is a standard to attain, and we are working to a quality standard, and we are working on a quest for excellence here. It's about being able to learn how to be the best and to deliver great service, great food. And because at the end of the day, when you think about quality, there is no advanced level. It's all about the basics. And the basics that we are teaching can apply in any walks of life.
Okay, Reem, what do you think about this?
Well, first of all, Fred, I think it's wonderful, the sort of idea of what you're doing and also trying to rehabilitate people. I think it's really great. I've just got 2 questions. So first of all, who is paying for it? And if this was to be a sort of nationwide scheme, would it be, do you want the government to pay for it? Or would you like this to be a sort of private initiative that goes into prisons? And my second question is effectively around where that money would actually go. So if it was the taxpayer paying for it, I actually think that ultimately that money could be used a lot more efficient way. I mean, we already know that we're not building enough prisons. We already know that we don't have enough prison space. And so the question is, who are those people that actually get to actually go on those schemes? Is it those sort of murderers or sort of people that do quite terrible crimes?
So first question is on money. Who's paying for it? Second question is, how do you get to go on one of these schemes?
You see, I think also, we have to address, the question that you just asked, and in the manner that you asked the question, because it sounds like, why are we giving opportunities to people who are in prison? This is kind of the narrative that is coming back. And I think that in society, we have to look after everybody. And I think that we have to think about what works. And putting people in prisons, for 23 hours a day in a cell is not going to help society as a whole. It's not going to help the individuals, because they are not going to learn. They're going to come out and they're going to commit crime and they're going to go back in prison. And I talked about before the social economic context in which these people find themselves in prison. But to go back to the funding, we have funded the prisons in different ways. Some of it is through the fundraising efforts that we do. Others is through local governments, or in the case of Scrubs, Wormwood Scrubs, it was the Mayor's Fund. So we're looking at different ways and different initiatives, because obviously it's difficult. We have a cost of living crisis. There's lots of different priorities that the government needs to make in terms of the NHS, in terms of housing, in terms of winter fuel payment. There's so many different things. And I think it's about balanced. But one thing we have to remember is, if we leave people in a cell for 23 hours a day without creating opportunities for them to teach them or to upskill them, they will go back to prison. And we have to remember what are our values and what we stand for. In terms of who gets to go there, obviously there's a lot of health and safety in prison, for obvious reasons. So the offenders that come into our course are people who have already made the journey within themselves. They want to change their way of life, and they want to start something new. And this is why they embark on the right course. They embark on the training that we provide.
Okay, but there are some people that can't be rehabilitated, right?
Okay, sorry, I'm just going to move on.
And we do not work with these people. We specialize in a certain type of offenders, in a certain type of prisons. Of course, people who are going to work in the kitchen with knives, with the public. You have to have the right kind of people. So to your point about murderers, no, we don't do that.
Okay. Fred, we're just getting lots of calls on this as well, and I'm conscious I haven't spoken to you, Michael, but I'll get to you in a minute. Susan from Worcestershire, what do you think about what you've heard Fred say so far?
Loads of rubbish.
Really? Why?
Well, my husband was a prison officer for over nearly 30 years. And when he was there, they had everything they wanted. They could pick what food they had. They could go and cook it themselves. they had a life of luxury in there, and half of them come back out and cause more trouble because they got looked after so well in prison.
OK, Susan, but here's what Fred is saying. And Fred, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm going to give you a chance to come back and speak to Susan. But that's the problem, isn't it? They leave and they reoffend, and they reoffend mostly because they don't have any opportunities. They don't have any opportunities in the workplace. They can't find themselves somewhere to live because they're not earning any money. What Fred here is trying to do is fix that problem and make sure when they leave, they have qualifications. They can go into a restaurant and say, look, I have done this training, I know how to do this, I know health and safety standards, I know what I'm supposed to do with food, and someone can employ them and give them that chance. Wouldn't that be great to not see someone return back to prison?
Yes, but why don't they give them a hard labour, like getting the road surfaces cleared up and sorted?
I mean, that is very interesting. How hard is it in a kitchen, Fred? Is it the equivalent to, you know, picking litter or digging holes and having to fill it back up, the kind of punishment people want to see criminals face?
Well, I don't know what people want to see, you know, criminal, you know, dig the roads, you know, and be publicly humiliated. I don't know which people want to do that.
It sounds a bit like a chain gang, doesn't it?
Sounds like a gulag in Russia.
I think that, you know, working in prison is a privilege. I don't know if you've ever been in a prison. You know, it's not a nice environment, of course. And if you spend 23 hours of your day, you know, locked up in a cell, it's very, very difficult on your mind, physically as well. It's very hard. So to learn something and to just be active and to just find that you are actually developing and learning and realizing yourself, you know, it's a wonderful thing for all these young men that we work with. And it's true that sometimes, you know, you work with a cohort of learners, and out of maybe 10 learners, maybe only 5 will find a job or 3 will find a job. But the point is it's 3 more than if we had done nothing. And I think that we have to remember that it's not going to work every single time. We are going to have some failures, but the failures shouldn't stop us, because even if you can get one right and get an opportunity to one person, I think it's worth it.
OK, let's go back to the calls. Pam from Monmouthshire, what's your view on this?
Hello. Yes, I'm an ex-prison officer, and I worked in a prison for 10 years. Now, punishment of somebody in prison is the loss of freedom. And the loss of freedom is, you cannot imagine what it costs. But this is a wonderful scheme to help people to rehabilitate. It might not work for everybody, but as Fred says, if it just works for the odd one or two, yes, I think it's a good idea. Going back to about February, there was a Songs of Praise all about from people in prison, and they had a prison restaurant there, and people were going there, and it worked well. And I think it would be a good thing, a positive thing to look at in the future.
Pam, I think there are restaurants that do try to employ a lot of people that have been in prison to give them a new start. I think the Clink is one, or Click is one. Michael, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, I basically agree with all of what Fred has said and what Pam has said, so I don't mind that I haven't spoken so much in this section.
Your point has been covered.
But Fred, I wanted to ask you, do you find that even when you've trained someone well and you're confident that they would be great in a kitchen on the outside world, that employers are still very, very reluctant to employ someone who's been to prison? Is that sort of a problem that you've encountered?
There is a stigma attached to being an ex-offender, of course. And what people forget sometimes is that something like 30% of the population has a criminal record. And, you know, I think that this is the thing that we have to remember. But you know, people, you know, when they find a job, you know, it's just changing their life completely. And that is the beauty of it, you know.
Well, also getting a skill and getting the confidence in that, I'm sure, changes people's lives. Linda from Cheshire, we're running out of time, but what's your view on this? Would you eat at one of these restaurants?
Oh, good morning, Storm. Well, I have done.
Oh.
It was absolutely amazing. The food was 5-star. The prisoners were, well, in fact, so good that my sisters and I wrote a letter to the prison thanking them on such a wonderful occasion.
How did you get the opportunity?
Well, it was advertised and my sister booked it, and off we went to Surrey. It was just an amazing day. The prisoners were just amazing, and I believe that these prisoners are nearly ready for release. You know, it's not someone who's just served 1 year out of 6 or 7. They're ready for release, and the queue to get onto this scheme with the prisoners. The incentive to get on it was amazing. So I'm all for it. If there was one nearer me, there's Style Prison near me, but that's not quite the same. You could just go for lunch, I think, and you don't actually...
more than happy to roll more of these out across the country. It sounds, Linda, if it was that good, that there'll be more people going, and actually it might start making money for the government, never mind costing us money. Linda,
can I just say, there is a restaurant almost in every prison. So it's a case of turning the restaurant that there is there into a training restaurant. So it's about setting up a system, setting up standards, setting up the qualification curriculum that prisoners need to go through in order to be ready for release, with the qualification and the skills. But there is a restaurant in every prison.
Fred.
The problem is because we have a funding issue, in terms of, for example, the number of prison officers.
Fred,
it's difficult to take...
I'm so annoyed. I'm so upset I couldn't let you go on. We've come to the end of the show. I'm so sorry. Thank you very much for joining us. A huge special thank you to Fred. Thank you to Michael and Reem for joining us today and for all your calls and messages. Jeremy will be here at 9:15 tomorrow morning. I'll be back, same time, same place. Until then, have a lovely afternoon.